Yes.
All right, good evening. This is a special and regular meeting of the Hollister City Council on February 20th, 2024. Meeting is now called to order. It is 6:01 p.m. City Clerk, would you please call roll?
Councilmember Resendez.
Present.
Councilmember Morales.
Present.
And Mayor Casey.
Present.
Councilmembers Perez and Burns are not present. I'd also like to report that the agenda for the City Council of the City of Hollister special and regular meeting of February 20th, 2024 was posted on the bulletin board at City Hall on February 15th, 2024 at 3:34 p.m. for Government Code Section 54954.2. Thank you.
City Clerk, are there any public comments on closed session items?
Mayor Casey, there are no public comments for any of the closed session items.
City Attorney, could you announce the closed session, please? Yes, the City Council will be meeting in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. So the real property negotiations discussing price and terms. The property is 25,466 square foot public right of way located on McCade Street, south of Park Street and east of Prospect Avenue in Hollister. The agency negotiator is James Marioni, the city manager, and the other negotiating party is Toro Petroleum. Okay, we will have a motion to adjourn to closed session. Come on. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Okay, good evening. We are convening a regular meeting of the Hollister City Council. The meeting is now called to order. It is 6:30 p.m. Councilmember Morales, can you lead us in the pledge?
Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City attorney, do we have any recordable actions in closed session? No, there's nothing to report. Okay. Before we begin, I just want to read something about decorum in our meetings. I need to address the manner of decorum of our meetings and issue a warning in this regard. Meetings must be in an orderly and efficient manner without willful disruption so that the business of the city can be conducted. While the council is more than willing to listen to comments from the public, this must be done at the appropriate time and should be done at the podium with the microphone so your words can be heard and properly recorded. There cannot be interruptions when council members are speaking or audience members call names, chanting, and yelling out. If you do so, a warning will be issued to you, and if you give your continues, you may be asked to leave the chambers. If we have too much disruption from the audience, depending on severity, it may be necessary to call a recess for chambers or council meeting. I would like to ask for your courtesy and cooperation in this regard, so it won't be necessary to take any of these actions. All right, public input. Prior to taking public comment, I need to announce that agenda item C1 regarding options for a crosswalk for Memorial Drive will not be discussed at tonight's meeting. It was an error on the agenda. The item was already heard on February 5th. It was just inadvertently included, so I apologize for confusion. All right, this is the time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to the city clerk before speaking. When the city clerk calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the record, and speak to the city council. If you're joining us via Zoom, please click on the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. If you're joining us via Zoom using a cell phone, please press *9.
Madam Mayor, are we not doing public issues before we take public comment?
It's right after public input on the script, that's why.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note, state law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking action on items that are not on the agenda. City clerk, do we have public comment?
We do not have any public items for, public comment for items not on the agenda.
Okay. Then we're going to move on. We have special orders of the day. We have a couple of proclamations. We're going to start with Victoria Montoya for the San Benito Health Foundation. Comes out. Read the proclamation. So this is the San Benito Health Foundation. It's the whereas Give Kids a Smile was created by the American Dental Association as an initiative to give free dental care to children of underserved populations. And whereas the San Benito Health Foundation is a proud partner and is committed to improving health and dental services for our community's underserved population. And whereas on Friday, February 23rd, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., the San Benito Health Foundation will be hosting its annual Give Kids a Smile, where Dental Director Dr. Edwin Acosta, along with Dr. Fafen and staff, will provide free dental screenings and fluoride treatment for children and teens under 17 years old. Now, therefore, I, Amy Casey, Mayor of Hollister, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby thank the San Benito Health Foundation for their ongoing efforts and commitment to the City of Hollister and the community.
When I encourage anyone who's interested to visit our clinic, feel free to please come in, especially when they're good.
Thank you. Okay. One more proclamation for Black History Month. And Janessa, I think you're going to come up, although you're all welcome to come up if you'd like.
So first, I just wanted to recognize this, a group that's actually put several events together, and I wanted to recognize Jimmy Riddle, Anita Silenthouse, Pamela Brown, Jenna Rice, Denise Black, Straw Bracamonte Law, and Janessa Law for all of their efforts, and I want to read the proclamation to you. Whereas the city of Hollister takes pride in recognizing February 2024 as Black History Month to honor the actions, words, and achievements of Black Americans who have contributed to the success and prosperity of the United States. And whereas through literature, music, architecture, dance, film, and every conceivable medium in between, Black artists and intellectuals have used their talents to honor their heritage, educate and inspire, and open minds and hearts. And whereas Black History Month commemorates, celebrates, and thanks Black Americans for their innumerable achievements and contributions in academic pursuits, business, fine arts, political action, science, and more. Now, therefore, I, Mia Casey, Mayor of Hollister, do hereby proclaim February 2024 to be Black History Month. And during this month, urge us to draw inspiration from this legacy as we continue together on the path toward equality, liberty, and opportunity for all. Would you like to say a few minutes? Sure. All right, we're going to move on to our consent agenda. Do any members of council have any questions or comments on items from the consent agenda?
If I can pull item A7, please.
That's I'd like to pull item 10. All right, if I could get a motion to adopt the consent agenda with the exceptions of items 7 and 10.
So,
There's a second? Second. All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
And Mayor Casey, do you want to state for the record that there were no public comments for any of the consent agenda items?
Oh, sorry about that. Right. So let's move to item 7, ordinance number 1246, an ordinance of the city of Hollister, amending City of Hollister Municipal Code Section 2.08.090, removal of office of Chapter 2.08, City Manager, by Title 2, Administration and Personnel.
are we gonna get a report on the item or?
Yeah, the purpose of this ordinance amendment is to change the number of votes required to remove the city manager from his position. Right, without cause. So for cause would still require a 3/5 vote of the city council, but without cause would require 4/5 vote. And that change is in alignment with the city manager's current contract.
Thank you. So, I first want to go on the record by stating that City Manager David Marioni is the best city manager that we've had, that I've ever had the pleasure of working with since my time here. I just want to say that publicly. I am the senior most city council member here. And the staff that we have now, because of Mr. Marioni, is superb and the best staff I've ever had the chance to work with. So I want to get on the record and state that. However, when it comes to this item, and I discussed this with my colleagues, I discussed it with David Marioni, I have not stated it publicly. I think it sets a bad precedent for any city manager that is coming to our city and getting a 4/5 vote rather than what's traditionally been a 3/5 vote here. So I cannot support this moving forward. And because of that, I don't know if now is the most appropriate time to speak about it, or we can talk about it later. Because it doesn't really match up with his contract that you're attending.
I can look at that and make sure that, so you're saying that what the ordinance is proposing does not align with his current contract?
No, because I can't support it, then it's not gonna align with this contract.
Right, and so because he has a contract that will take precedent over the ordinance.
It's protected.
Right, and so it's just any future city manager that would be subject to that.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Councilman Wallace, do you have any comments on that?
No, the contracts align with what we have, so I'm in support.
And I'd like to just add that I'm also in support. We're not talking about an instance where there's a clause. We're talking about for no reason if the council should decide to do away with it. So I'm sorry, that's a terrible way to put it, but for no reason, I think there should be a filter, so it shouldn't just be, three people to decide for no reason. So I fully support this. So, are we able to take a vote on this? Is this one that we have to have it?
You should take a vote, does require 3 votes, affirmative votes, and if we don't have 3 votes, then
That happens. Yes.
it does.
It does, but the contract still stands.
Right.
Okay. All right, then can I get a motion on this item?
Make a motion to approve.
And a second it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those,
No. Madam Mayor, I believe we need to take public comment on the item as well. I'm sorry.
There are no public comments for this item on any of the other consent agenda items.
thank you. All right, so we're gonna move on then to item 10. Resolution number 2024-11. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Hollister approving the subdivision improvement agreement with Father Solomon and authorizing execution of the agreement for the improvements with Duke Realty Hollister Limited Partnership. I asked to pull this. It's not a question regarding the subdivision itself, but it relates to the project. And I just have a question I'd like to ask our city attorney. I am very supportive of economic development, but this project has concerned me since its inception, and there is a huge traffic impact that I'm not sure has been addressed. And so my question for you is, in looking back at the planning commission meetings, they had created some kind of a timeline for when they could have their 200 trucks on the road every day. And I guess my question for you is, they created a timeline, but they have no way of enforcing it according to the threat at the time, unless people can tell me. Do we have any saying, is that something we could look at, and is there anything else we can do to prevent gridlock?
I mean, I'm not familiar enough with that to speak today.
Okay, so we could possibly bring it back to talk about it at some point. Is that how, so we just bring it up later and ask what we got back? Is that the best way?
And if I could have Ms. Kelly, in our planning department, provide a little bit of information as well.
That would be great.
Yes, good evening, Eva Kelly, Planning Manager, Acting Director of Development Services Department. I don't have any specific details for you, just off the top of my sleeve here, but there was an EIR adopted for the overall Clears Park subdivision. And then there was an amendment in 2018, mostly related to traffic. And then there was another amendment for the Project Almond project itself. And all 3 of those documents have mitigation measures. And what we do is a mitigation monitoring and reporting plan for the development of the project. So they'll have to comply with those mitigation measures as well as any conditions that are put.
So you're saying there was an update then?
Yes,
For
there was,
for this project, because at the time I watched that planning commission for the conditional use permit, they said there was a plan. And
there was an addendum for the,
so it was added on, so we do have something.
yes,
So it's addressed in the.
yeah, in 2020 or 2021, I can't recall, the exact, I think it was a 2020 addendum to the EIR for the project, which was approved early in 2021, is I believe the dates. That 2020 addendum addressed the Project Almond specific traffic impacts as it related to the previous addendum as well as the 2000 EIR, and had a specific traffic analysis for the project.
So what was the agreement with them as far as not having trucks on the road and rush out of traffic?
I would have to look at that exactly.
So something we can help. Okay. All right, I have no other questions. Do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. So I'm confused. This is talking about the improvement agreement. So the concerns that the mayor is bringing up, does that have to do with this? Those improvement agreements, does that have to do with this item?
Probably can, but go ahead on the specifics.
So the subdivision improvement agreement is to satisfy the conditions of the project because it is an approved conditioned project. So the subdivision improvement agreement is to certify and make sure that the improvements that that project is conditioned to are constructed. So
The concern that she brought up specifically about the trucks in the traffic, is that part of this item that we talked about mitigating, if it was mitigated or not?
not necessarily.
Okay, that's what I thought. Number two, what's the tax revenue that, just on average, the tax revenue that we're gonna generate from, having another Amazon here to our city every single year?
So that's a tough one to answer.
Just a rough estimate.
I mean, it depends on what products they have in. Right now, it was, the last update we had received publicly was that it was for a large items.
Mhm.
And so depending on full build out, I mean, you could definitely see six figures in tax revenue. Possibility of seven. Until they are in there and have a model that they have adopted.
Millions, potentially
Well,
millions of dollars in sales revenue.
And there's potentially an information that you make a decision upon, which
Yeah.
I would caution.
Yeah.
Until we're seeing it, I wouldn't put a number on it. Because they have, if you think about space, if they're selling, a boat that is $1,000, the sales tax on a boat versus the physical space of hard drives could be considerably different. So it depends on what the products are and all that, where it's being shipped to. So I hate to give you a wishy-washy answer, but to give you a number at this point would be.
And what do we do with that tax revenue?
So that tax revenue would go into the general fund.
Fix the roads, staff our police, our fire, make sure our city's nice and safe, parks, all
Yes,
that.
all of that is general fund. With the roads, we do have a series of other funds.
Yeah.
But at times, general fund is used.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So yeah, this is critical that we get this approved. It sounds like the concerns that the mayor brought up were eventually, but she's right, she never did support this item. But we need to bring more businesses here, generate more revenue so that we can maintain our infrastructure and make sure that our citizens have a higher quality of life that they have had from just building more houses here. So I 100% support this. Looking forward to hearing from the public. Thank you.
That's usually nice.
On any specific deadlines for this project, if we want to have it brought back with additional information so that we can actually review the mitigation efforts as talked about in 2018, 2020, or 2021, just so that we have that information.
So I can certainly provide the city manager with the adopted and certified EAR and the addendums for distribution to the council. Those are adopted documents and the entitlements are approved with the conditions, and the mitigation measures all have their timing and their various conditions. So those are in place and the project is entitled. They're under construction now. So provided that their entitlements don't, or they don't pause construction and lose their building permit, they're entitled and fully able to complete the project. What's on the agenda tonight, as Socorro mentioned, is the subdivision improvement agreement. So this is their agreement with the city for all of the city infrastructure as well as the offsite infrastructure. So this includes them bonding for making sure that the roads that they've agreed to install, the sidewalks they've agreed to install, the roundabout that will be going in on San Felipe, all of those things, they'll bond for it and they are agreeing to construct them. Otherwise, the city will construct them on their behalf. As far as the on-site improvements, the construction of the building, that's approved underway and it's already done. So the timing, as far as conditions and mitigation measures, those are still in place. The vast majority are completed because they're at that stage in the project, but there are conditions such as impact fees and those types of things that are done at final occupancy. So there's still that step in the building permit process. And then those entitlements do run the building. So you have the code enforcement efforts as far as if there's non-compliance with any other section of the code or your conditions of approval.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And thank you for getting that information. If there is some kind of a traffic schedule, whatever you have, just if you can send that to the board, just that's great. Thank you. So can I get a motion then to approve this item?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, second. All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries 3-0. So we'll move on to public hearing. We have item 1, resolution number 2024-18, a resolution of the city council of the city of Hollister denying appeal 2022-2 and upholding the planning commission denial of the conditional use permit. 2023-3 to install a CNG fueling facility for exclusive use by Star Concrete vehicles operating on the adjacent Star Bath plant and material supply facility. San Benito Rockery located at 151 West Road, located north of Gibbs Road, within the M1 light industrial zone. Yes.
Hi, Matthew Gonzalez, contact me finance. I have been informed that, appellant wasn't able to attend today and is requested continuance. Since the big notice is I would refer to those three attorneys asking what it should be. If the city council chooses to continue the item, we would suggest that you do so to a date certain, because the item has been noticed and that way it wouldn't have to be covered for the next. Yes.
Thank you. Question, do they have to be here for us to hear the item to make a decision on it tonight?
They don't have to be here, but typically with a public hearing that relates to a particular party's property rights, it is a good idea to have them available to the wish. So because a public hearing is for all parties to present their sides.
It's publicly noticed that they chose not to come.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, do we know why they're not here?
We do.
Okay, I'm definitely in support of the bill, that's why.
Yeah.
Again, I just said I want to support comments and business and help businesses further, so I'm definitely in support of it. I'm willing to move forward without them being here in support of it and happening the public comment. Thanks.
That's what what's your thoughts about continuing on favor of if the applicant is the one requesting for it to be moved, then I would respect the applicant's request and I would say that it will be unless available there or in consultation with the applicant. Councilor Morales, city manager, where do you think this could be brought down?
I have to chat with the clerk. We're gonna have to rerun the notice in the paper. Will we have to?
Not if we announce tonight, it's to
Okay.
a date certain. So if we can pick that date right now, then you wouldn't have to.
I mean, as far as the work is done, so I mean, if we don't need to do that, we could just scoot it to the next meeting. The March 4th.
So what is the will of the council then if we got to continue it? So is that's sufficient? Okay, so we're going to continue that and then so that
So we need to take public comment on it.
do we have any public comment on this?
We don't, but we're not doing the public hearing right now, so it's
So
just
we
being
don't.
continued to March 4th.
So we need to follow vote on it.
Not required.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
We'll move on to item 19, resolution number 2024-19, a resolution of the city council of city of Hollister authorizing city manager to act as the certifying officer in order to certify the finding of no significant impact, sign any other related documents, and transmit the policy to the Department of Housing and Urban Development pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act for the Eden Housing and Russell Street investors. Affordable residential development located on lot 100 in the West Fairview specific plan. The next step.
Good evening. I'm going to try to be very brief. This is for the Eden Housing Project located in West Fairview, shown on the light blue rectangle on the screen. The project has been approved. The planning commission approved the site architectural review for the construction of a 100-unit multi-family affordable project within West Fairview. It's to be restricted to affordable incomes for families and farm workers for a period of 55 years. After the project was approved, the applicant applied for project-based Section 8 vouchers for the development for HUD, and HUD requires that we prepare environmental review under NEPA to review the project in order to release those funds. So, as required, an environmental assessment was prepared, and based on what the environmental assessment determined, staff determined that a finding of no significant impact was appropriate for the project. NEPA requires adequate noticing of the FONSI, but doesn't get into specifics. So staff followed our normal review requirements for SIGRA. We received 2 comments on the FONSI, both were unrelated to the FONSI. One was from the school district, and they reiterated their request that the city continue to inform them of projects, and the other was from an individual that didn't want to play that.
Eric, just to clarify, it was a high school district.
Sorry, guys. So in conclusion, staff is recommending that you adopt the resolution and have the city manager sign the FONSI as the certifying officer. We will then continue the rest of the process so that the funds can be issued by that. That concludes my presentation. Have you have any answer any questions you have?
Awesome. Do you have any questions from council? Any questions? All right, then I'm going to open the public hearing on this item. City clerk, do you have any public comment?
Yes, we have speaker Ouija Song.
Hi, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members of the City of Hollister. Thank you for taking the time to see this item today. And I want to say a big thank you to everyone for our industry dedicated to working with us to bring more affordable housing to the City of Hollister. So my name is Rachel Song. I'm here on behalf of Eden Housing. Eden Housing is a nonprofit affordable housing developer that's been operating in California for close to 60 years. We currently serve over 22,000 low-income residents throughout the state of California, including here in the city of Hollister, and we're hoping to bring 100 new units to the city. The Western Fairview Affordable Project will be 100 units of low-income affordable housing for farm workers and families. Translated into numbers, 30 to 50% AMI. Families would be earning, a family of 4 would be earning less than $55,000 a year. So these are critically needed affordable units. We've also secured these very important project-based vouchers that will make the project financially feasible. And in supporting this resolution today to adopt the environmental assessment and the FONSI, we'll actually officially be able to accept the land donation from Ward Homes and hopefully move forward with construction. So I hope that you will support this request today. Thank you.
Mayor Casey, those are all the public comments for this item.
And then the close the public hearing for this item. All right, so let's open this up then. Question, deliberation, Councilmember, Resendes.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak. I'm 100% supportive of after hearing you speak. I just want to say thank you for coming out here tonight. We look forward to continuing our partnership with working with you. We desperately need affordable, critical affordable housing units here. And we'll do anything we can to make that possible. And I've got to say, I'm pretty disappointed that they still would oppose this and everything. So thank you for being here tonight.
That's really nice. No question for you about. I'm just agree with Resendes. Thank you so much for coming out and for all the work you do. I'm well aware of the housing, so I'm glad you're partnering with us, and I'm looking forward to seeing that get built. So I think there's no further discussion. Can I get a motion to approve this item? Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Motion carries. Please, all right, so we move on to council business. Item 1, item 1, council. Item 2 is informational report related to traffic studies requested by city council. And we have the staff report.
That Christian Marine Engineering Department come up when Paul sets the presentation up.
Just count those.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. This next item is an informational report regarding traffic studies that have been requested. The first traffic study that is before you is the Sunny Slope on Beverly Drive. Currently it's a two-way stop, and this would be a traffic study to determine if this intersection would be all-way control stops, so four stops, total. The next item is also a four-way stop at San Diego and Hawkins, so this will be the same, thing as the other, traffic study to, make sure that this is something that is known for a, all-way stop. The next intersection is South Street and South Street. Currently, there's only, two stops, and we should determine if it's necessary to have an all-way stop. The next item before you is the San Diego Street, traffic calming. This is to determine the type of traffic calming between Hawkins and Nash. This traffic study will determine, the type of, improvements that will be, installed, on San Diego Street in order to, do the traffic, calming. Before you have, the cost for each individual, traffic calming and also traffic study, for the intersections that I just mentioned. City staff is requesting direction from council as to, which projects or which studies they would like to see, the city, move forward with. I would like to know that, city staff is, recommending to, conduct a traffic calming study in San Benito, at least not at this time, for several reasons. One of the main issues is that, currently there is a lot of infrastructure that needs to be updated, such as the water line, the sewer line. There's a lot of, issues with drainage at some of the intersections. So, rather than moving forward with some type of traffic calming, which will require to do surface improvements, the city would like to, wait until, later on, so that we can put together a project that will update the infrastructure and then, see if there's any traffic calming that will be, required. I would also like to note that there was a traffic study that was conducted in 2020 to 2021. I can't remember exactly which of those, but I believe it was 2020, that indicated that there was no speeding on San Benito Street. The average speeds were 33 miles an hour. The current, speed limit that is posted out there is 30 miles. The city is currently, installing additional speed limits, along with the speed, feedback, signs. Just to mitigate any of the speeding that is happening, but according to the study that was done back then, there wasn't any, speeding, to be, amended.
Question if I may, as well, we have one for Jan Avenue and Spring Drive. We did have it corrected, we did have it, in the packet is Jane Avenue, so my apologies there. Jan Avenue, we do get requests for that one through the office, and that is off of West Side. So if you're coming down 156 or the old 156 4th Street, and if you're going for the San Juan Bautista and come make a left on the west side, it would be Jan is your first right, and Jan and Spring gets a lot of requests as well. So we felt we'd put it on for this one as well, since we were discussing other ones.
And with that, that's the end of the presentation. Any questions and direction for some?
Thank you. Yeah, I guess my first question is like, what's the process? Why are we hearing this at a city council meeting? I thought we had like discretion to like get them to you and then do traffic studies, or did that change? I'm not 100% sure why we're hearing it here tonight.
Well, many of these came through consensus at the end of the meeting, and so we brought them all through in their totality.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that explanation. And then the traffic calming on San Benito. Well, we can do the study. I understand the concerns about the infrastructure. I'm assuming it's coming from your department, but we can still do the study. It doesn't mean we don't have to do the, we can do the business later. But we can still do the study, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
We can go forward with the study. This is one that we've had. I mean, there was an accident out there, I don't know, a handful of months ago. We had a lot of, I think all of you received input from the community. We did in our office as well. And, but in going through it, if we want to just in full disclosure, if we were to invest in a study, we still, I mean, even right now, we have a portion of San Benito that's that's closed for repairs.
That's what I'm saying. The biggest concern is the infrastructure underneath.
That
the
is
road.
correct.
The sewer, the water pipes that keep breaking.
The storm drains
Let's
as well.
Let's be 100% honest with that, about that. That's the biggest concern. So just to be clear with the public, we don't want to do any improvements until we fix that first. I'm gonna stop right there, because that is something I'm real passionate about. I go on and on and on, but that is question time. So, I'm just wondering if we can do the study and not do the improvements.
Thank you, and thank you for the pictures for that. At least for me, and it's a little bit more, okay, I get it. Do you have any data points on like the office and that was our consensus? Like, do we have 30 people complain in terms of safety on San Benito and Hollister Street, for example?
So our office did get a petition from several members of the public with concerns about speeding on San Benito. They went ahead and included the application for speed petitions, even though it's not warrant because of the policy that is in place. They still wanted to go ahead and collect the signatures to show this report. So there's quite a few residents concerned with speeding. However, as stated before, according to the study that was done a couple of years ago, we didn't see that there is actually speeding happening on Sunday. Another reason that we feel that is the fact that there was not enough signage. There was only one speed limit northbound. So currently we're working with the Public Works Department to install additional speed signs along with the speed feedback signs, which are the ones that will tell you the speed, to see if that will provide some type of traffic calming as far as people speeding on Sunday.
I can tell you some data points. I walked both sides of that street, and I can tell you every single resident that's on the street would tell you that that's their number one priority. This is speeding. Several people feel like, anyway, I think you're concerned. And I understand that you did a traffic safety study. But I think to Mr. Simmons' point is, we probably do a study to see what it might look like, but I understand that with the pictures, obviously, and that we want to consider to do at the same time. Do you have any other data points on the other streets in terms of like the frequency or how many people have?
At the other intersections, our office received a few concerns with, safety as far as being able to move from the intersection because vehicles traveling too fast. But not as many as we received on Sunday.
And some work has to be a consensus at the end of the meeting, so that's what we're going to do.
And my question is, it's not just, if I remember correctly, some of those intersections are accidents at those intersections, not correct. Drove part of this as well. Question around the policies that we did recently. We did one for the speed visions, but I thought we had done one regarding traffic calming generally. Didn't we have a full-on policy about how that?
I don't believe there's a policy for traffic calming.
So it's just for speed, because that's all you do. Okay. No, I mean, I heard Councilmember Morales' points about getting data and the other question I have for you is we're talking about, the traffic calming idea, but we're also talking about a stop sign at San Benito and Hawkins, and I think that was kind of the most recent comments I heard is someone got injured right there. So we're looking at a fuller stop there that may help. And city manager, I know we've got things to do on that street, but we don't have a timeline, do we? As far as when all that will be done, it's not happening in the next 6 months for the year.
That's correct.
So, okay. Those are-
So, Mr. Pelzil, if you wanted to provide some input on it.
Just a data point that we actually did an all-over stop control study at Hawkins, a few years ago, and it didn't meet warrants. The side street traffic the volumes weren't significant enough, and the side distance, it just didn't meet the warrant, so. But I do understand we could collect data and see if it meets warrants for calming or something else, from a speed study standpoint. And it could be a partial. Instead of doing the full layouts and everything, we could do it step by step and say, does it meet warrants for even to look at traffic calming, or should we just stop here?
This is just some question for you though, about, you look at things like the number of vehicles, right?
Yeah.
How do you gauge the amount of pedestrian traffic though? Because I know there's a lot that crosses.
Those are counted as well,
So
as
you
positive, and it is,
Do that.
there is,
I'm curious.
yeah, and I'm not,
If somebody's-
a traffic engineer, so, but I have been reading these things, and so, there are, 4 warrants or so, and one of them is, side street volume is one of the major ones. If the stop side street have enough volume, including pedestrian and bicycle, then that counts towards, meeting the warrant for an always stop. So it's one of the items, there's about 4 different ways with some subcategories in order to figure it out, yes.
Some of the concerns I've heard, is, the speeding, but really the concern, at least in San Diego and Hawkins, is that people just are not paying attention. And so they don't necessarily have to be speeding, people felt like trying to cross the street, trying to walk their dog, that people are just not, and I know that you can't control that, you can control, people behavior that way. But is there anything that can be done to just address the speed? Because it's really much like, hey, I don't want to get hit by a car, whether it's at 25 miles an hour or 45 miles an hour, I just don't want to get that.
So the only thing that I could think of is there's currently a striped crosswalk, which is not a high visibility crosswalk because it's not in proximity to the school. I mean, it is close to the school, but it doesn't meet the criteria to be close enough to be a high visibility crosswalk. We could definitely take a look to see if we can do some type of pedestrian crossing with the flashing beacons, but that's obviously something we'll have to look into.
Yeah, at least for the, if it takes more than often, I do.
That brings me to another question. So you said high visibility. What's the difference in crosswalk? What do you do that's different that makes it high visibility?
So one of the things is the color of the striping. So if you're looking at 500 feet of the school, it has to be yellow. If it's past the 500 feet, it can be white. If that has to be white. There's also the reflectors that you put on the ground, which is not the ones that you see on 4th Street, but it's more like the just to make it more visible, and so that when somebody's crossing, the cars are easier to so people driving are easier to visualize somebody out of the street.
Okay. Do you have any questions or things to public comment? Do you have any public comments on that?
Mayor Casey, there's no public comments for this item.
Okay, so let's have a discussion. Councilor Rosas was wondering about these girls.
Quite a few, I'll be honest with you. So I don't live in all these, I mean, the only one that's in my district is Jan and Spring, and I can tell you that over the years, I've gotten a number of phone calls specifically about that, specifically about the kids that are going to HPS. And I know that we don't count like school traffic and whatnot, but with all of these, I'll be honest, I guess, is that it's probably been a little while since we last did it, and we just came back from the pandemic. So I don't know if everything was fully like functional at the time. But Sunny Slope and Beverly, I get concerns and calls about that, I'll be honest, personally. Jan and Spring, and the other ones I drive, and I can tell you that I agree with doing traffic studies with all of that. With the San Benito and Hawkins traffic calming, 100% yes, we have to do the study. As I understand the staff's concerns, and I completely respect your concerns, but I think that we have to do the study now, and then we can look at how we can creatively work together in partnership with the residents there to mitigate some of the things that they're seeing. Because it's happening, and when you have that many people that passionate about wanting to change something, then we need to do something about it. I canvass every single election. I walked there too, and I mean, every time I walk where they're speeding, but that one, they were particularly reaching out to us, all of us, and we've got to do something. So I can't not support that through this study. Let's start with that. Now I'm gonna get on my infrastructure soapbox really quick, and I promise I'll get down, but this is why we need to do the master plans for the sewer. This is why we need to do the master plans for the collection. This is why we need to do all of those things before we add to our existing problems. I'm gonna get off my soapbox. But yes, 100%. And then, yeah, I'm just wondering what the protocol is, I guess, in the future. Residents reach out to us all the time, and if I see a pattern when I'm canvassing, I'd like for us to have the ability just to do a topic study, and I thought we had that. Well, we could just mention it to you, and maybe we even have like, it comes over discretionary funds or something like that. But I'd like for us to have that ability, so we don't have to bring it here, but let's get the studies done, let's get the results done, and then let's do something or not do something about it and go on the record about that. Thank you.
So is there, I should have asked this earlier, but is the ask that we have to pick one? I thought, can we do them all? If the recommendation is San Benito, like, let's look at the infrastructure as we're looking at whatever we're gonna do, just because we need to do it. So, that was my understanding and how I take it, and I also understand that we have the funds to be able to pay for this, because we have a lot of different funding sources to cover the costs. It doesn't have to come out of a discretionary fund, is that like it?
For these, yes.
So I'd say, these are the areas that at least we were all in agreement to move forward. My recommendation is that we should move forward with all these projects. I think for San Benito Street, want to really move into the staff and recommendations, understanding that we do need to do infrastructure work. But I think in just walking several times and talking to the residents, that is their number one concern. And the concern, it may not be like very clear, black and white, like it's not, may not be speeding, but it's, I feel unsafe. I feel unsafe to even like back up my driveway. I feel like I'm gonna get hit, could be because I'm distracted, but the bottom line is crossing the street, it is unsafe, whether it's speeding or something else. I think that's basically the underlying issue that needs to be addressed.
So, my thoughts are this, I mean, I think the stop signs that we're looking at, I mean, those are pretty much every one of them to me has accidents and things attached to them, like, and relatively expensive. I'm supportive of those. I'm a little questioning the traffic fine, only it's $60,000. We're not talking about 9,000 or 60,000. What does that involve? What are you doing for that study?
That would involve obviously collecting speed data, but then having 2 or 3 public outreach meetings with all the residents. That's a big chunk of that budget, because there's online surveys, there's translation, there's, they're in person, as well as probably would be a Zoom component to that too, so we can get as much participation as possible. From typically, we would not bring a layout for the first one, but from that first one, the input we get, we create a layout which would have, it would, think Sally
So
Street.
it's the full on, yeah. So
Yeah.
you're talking about full on.
We would bring them that layout back, get more comment on it, and then once we kind of have what, the consensus or what we have the results of both of at least 2 public outreach meetings, then we would come back to you.
Right, I gotcha. I get the process now, but again, I have to ask the question, if we're gonna be tearing up the street to do things, does it make sense to go through those kinds of meetings, get people's hopes up, and then go, oh, we can't put in all these things because we're about to do some work on the street?
Well,
That's
so
the problem. Yeah.
sorry,
No, go for it. Tell me.
like Sally Street also included, there was a pavement issue on Sally Street and a water line issue on Sally Street and a little bit of sewer, and so we bundled that all in together, and those really weren't part of this traffic calming study, because the civil engineer's best work is buried usually, and so they don't care about that, but we lumped those in for the same reasons that Christian already brought up. So those can be quantified and estimated while the study's going on, and we can bring that back to you guys to be as part of the whole project that we were estimating.
So we might be able to do the
Yeah.
same.
Oh,
kind of
we can
thing.
totally-
That makes more sense. I just hate to see all this excitement and $60,000 spent. I'm like, okay, well, we gotta wait 3 years to get this other piece, and then the data's outdated.
I would want to design it together, as you get efficiencies out of it, and it would be one project just like that.
Does that jive with what we're thinking? That one for the next rise and all that, because we're talking big chunk of money if they're gonna do some kind of.
Yeah, and I mean, there would be options. Whatever ends up getting designed would come back to council multiple times as part of the CIP project for a bigger discussion.
That's what you're saying.
Thank you. So quick follow-up, the Councilmember Morales said that there's funding, I just want to be clear, is there earmarked funding from tax revenue, or is this, general fund? Because you said it's not discretionary, I get that. Is it earmarked? Is it coming out of general fund? Where is the money coming from?
So for these studies, what we do is on these, we do work orders with the Kinley One contract, and that is a mix. Sometimes it's general fund, sometimes it is out of road fund, depending on that. So,
Okay. And with this one, we don't know specifically.
yeah, we'd have to.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Yeah, just going back, I was looking, these items were brought forward. The reason we brought these forward is these were on the council update list. And so we had published them in our packet that we would be bringing to this meeting as part of the options at the end of the meeting. So.
So, any thoughts from, that's all. Those numbers and what you thought.
Yeah, my recommendation is to the board with all of them, and then, yeah, that's it. Let's just start with that, and then bring back our reports, and then we'll go from there.
Councilmember Morales.
Nelson, and thank you for explaining. I think the residents are going to be very happy to hear that their voice will be included in San Benito, and I think you'll have at least a better understanding of like what their concerns are, and that it may not necessarily be speed, but it might be safety plus anything else. So I think they'll give you a better understanding of kind of the design that we need to monitor everything. But I agree we should move forward with all of them. And any infrastructure that can be done, which only needs to be done.
And just to provide clarity, I just wanted to verify, due to the safety element of these, we are able to use non-general fund dollars to do this.
I just want to ask one last question. You're going to do some speed surveys and what if the data all shows that it doesn't warrant anything from that? If it's, all within the speed limits, then what,
And so most, all but one is an always stop control, and speed is not, stop controls are not traffic calming. They are not speed.
specifically.
Yeah, so since, so what we can do at that point, if there's not a warrant, then we can, and I'm not sure that would necessarily preclude it from happening, because it sounds like there's other concerns, and so there could be the outreach at least to find out what those concerns are, and if there's a redirect that needs to happen, then we can come back and redirect our.
Given all that, I'm supportive as well, so I think we got that from them. We have to really vote on this, guys. Just information. We're good at moving ahead.
I think we have consensus for all the options that are brought forward. So
Let's go with it. For our municipal legislative update, do we have a staff report?
Mayor, Casey, council members, my name is Bob Rinaldi, the city attorney's office, and glad to be back and giving you the year's quarterly municipal legislative update. There aren't too many things on the agenda, so fairly. We'll start off with local government. We're first looking at Senate Bill 386. Senate Bill 386 introduced significant amendments and additions to the elections code, aiming to refine and enhance the electoral processes within the state. It was sponsored by Senator Josh Newman, and the bill received bipartisan support. Key aspects of SB 386 include modifications to statistical sampling methods for verifying signatures on petitions, adjusting the required content of ballots, and imposing additional duties on local elections officials. The bill notably repeals certain requirements for ballot instructions in presidential elections, streamlining the content to presumably make ballots more accessible and easier to understand for voters. One of the pivotal changes introduced by SB 386 is the adjustment of procedures for the examination and verification of signatures on electoral petitions. It allows for the use of statistical sampling to ascertain the validity of signatures to specific thresholds set to determine when a full verification process is necessary. This is intended to expedite the verification process, making it more efficient and maintaining accuracy and integrity. Part of SB 386 also requires part of the improvement to enhance transparency and accessibility regarding municipal election. It also requires city elections officials to post and publish notices about nomination papers, including details about the offices to be filled, the availability of nomination papers to incumbents, and the impact of redistricting on incumbent eligibility. The measure ultimately aims to improve public awareness and participation in municipal elections. Moving on to Senate Bill 29. This is sponsored by Senators Steve Glazer and Rosalise Ochoa-Bo. SB 29 codifies a political reform education program, or TREP, in statute authorizing the FPPC to establish and administer an educational program for individuals who violate the act as an alternative to administrative, civil, or criminal penalties. The program aims to educate violators with little or no experience with the Political Reform Act, offering a rehabilitative approach rather than punitive measures. Moreover, the bill allows the FPPC to charge a fee for participation in PrEP with the stipulation that it not exceed the reasonable cost of administering the program. It also mandates filing officers to waive late fees for individuals who complete PrEP or were unable to file timely due to serious illness or hospitalization. We're going to go to Assembly Bill 1448, which is cannabis enforcement by local jurisdictions. AB 1448 was sponsored by Assemblyman Greg Wallace, and it focuses on enhancing the local jurisdictions' enforcement capabilities against unlicensed cannabis activities. This legislation was developed to address the challenges posed by unlicensed cannabis operations, reinforcing local authorities' power to implement and enforce cannabis-related laws effectively. This bill was introduced against the backdrop of the AUMA, or Prop 64, which authorizes commercial adult use cannabis activity under state licensure and applicable local ordinances. AB 1448 specifically allows local jurisdictions to impose administrative fines or penalties on violations of local laws related to cannabis and cannabis products, essentially allowing localities to utilize the administrative citation process with some of this enforcement. As part of their ability to be able to do this, the key provisions of AB 1448 include a 50-50 cost state-local split of the statutory penalties that are recovered in actions that are brought by local jurisdictions. So essentially, the penalty will first be used to reimburse a prosecuting agency, so it would either be the city attorney or the district attorney's office. Once the reimbursement had occurred, 50% of the remainder, if any, would be paid to the county or city as applicable, and the remainder would be deposited in the city's general fund. The 50-50 split of these funds essentially would go towards enabling more enforcement actions to be able to combat some of this unlicensed and unlawful cannabis production. Moving on to Assembly Constitutional Amendment 13. If you recall, we spoke last year about the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act and how it was attempting to change the voting thresholds and the requirements for cities to be able to increase fees or collect taxes or to pass taxes. This was passed, excuse me, this was passed really because of that act itself. And what this does is it's aimed at modifying the voting thresholds for ballot initiatives, specifically those that propose to amend the state constitution to alter voter approval requirements for passing state or local measures. This amendment stipulates that any ballot initiative seeking to increase the voter approval threshold for future measures must itself be passed by the same higher threshold that it proposes. If you recall, under the Taxpayer Protection Act, it was attempting to require a 2/3 vote for any tax to ever be passed moving forward, yet it itself only required a majority vote to pass. And so what this is intending to do is say, if you're going to do require 2/3, and you need to pass by 2/3 as well, under the initiative process. So ACA 13 also grants local governing bodies the authority to conduct advisory votes on governance issues, allowing local voters to express their opinions on specific matters. These advisory votes are designed to gauge community sentiment about having binding effect or without having binding effect on local policy. This emergence, again, emerged in response to the concerns about special interests that were attempting to manipulate California's electoral process to initiative. We briefly did discuss Senate Bill 553, which was the occupational safety, workplace, and violence prevention. We have received additional information for this, although it is still, in development, and our firm is actively working with clients in order to be able to establish the policy plan that needs to be implemented by July 1, I believe this year, July 1st, yes, 2024. And so, in addition to that, we've got additional information about what a plan or what the workplace violence prevention plans have to include, and a list of them is named, the job titles of persons responsible for implementation, the effective procedures to obtain active involvement of employees and union reps to develop and implement a plan, the methods employer use to coordinate implementation, effective procedures to ensure supervisory and non-supervisory employees comply consistently. There's also development of effective procedures to communicate with employees about workplace violence matters, effective procedures to respond to actual or potential workplace violence and emergencies. In addition to several others that will also be included within that workplace violence prevention plan. And again, we are currently working to draft some model plans because it seems as if the state will not likely provide any actual guidance regarding what these should look like for lots of years. In addition to that, there was also Senate Bill 428 regarding temporary restraining orders that are now allowable for workplace harassment. So SB 428 was sponsored by Senator Kathleen Blakespear, and it expands California's workplace violence restraining order law to also cover workplace harassment. Effective January 1, 2025, employers can seek temporary restraining orders not only for threats of violence, but also for harassment against employees. This change aims to allow earlier intervention before harassment escalates into violence. For terms of this, harassment is defined as a knowing and willful course of conduct directed at a specific person that seriously alarms, annoys, or harasses a person, and that serves no legitimate purpose. The course of conduct must be that which would cause a reasonable person to suffer substantial emotion of distress and must actually cause substantial emotion of distress. So this expands the ability for these temporary restraining orders to be obtained. Again, a temporary restraining order cannot be obtained, which would prevent free speech or any of the protected activities under the national labor relations. And then last, I believe we have Assembly Bill 817, which discusses open meetings and teleconferencing for subsidiary bodies. This bill passed would allow until January 1, 2026, a subsidiary body of a local agency to teleconference without meeting all of the teleconferencing requirements of the Brown Act. So a subsidiary body is defined as a legislative body that meets all the following criteria: is a commission, committee, board, or other body of the local agency, whether permanent or temporary, decision-making or advisory created by charter, ordinance, resolution, or formal action. They serve exclusively in an advisory capacity, and they are not authorized to take final action on legislation, regulations, contracts, licenses, permits, or any other impediment. An example would be like your Arts and Culture Commission or your Parks and Rec Commission or the Airport Commission. In order to try to increase the public's involvement in these types of commissions, they're trying to expand the manner in which they can appear remotely so that individuals can participate more frequently within these types of commissions. So this would allow a subsidiary body to use teleconferencing without meeting the requirements of the Brown Act. They would still need to post agendas at the telecom, or they would not need to post agendas at the teleconference location. They would not need to identify each teleconference location in the notice and agenda. They would not need to make each teleconference location accessible, and they would not have to meet the requirement that at least one of the members of the subsidiary body were in the location of their jurisdiction. With that, I just thought I have for this evening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Councilman, so these are the questions.
Thank you. I don't know if you said when they're taking effect, but I'm assuming those are taking effect at the beginning of the year.
So the ones that are on the horizon are moving through the legislature. The initial items have already taken effect. So it would be, so these that are on the horizon, this one goes into effect July 1, 2024. These others, this is potentially, this is an initiative that's on the ballot, but all of these other ones have already been taken.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Councilman Morales, any questions? Thank you. On 5.3, we had asked, I think, the question of the last presentation, or we have included elected officials.
So there are instances, I believe, wherein it may apply, but essentially the determination of that would be in those few instances where an elected official were to be considered an employee. Because this primarily applies to those employees as part of the program. And so there are there's very narrow set of circumstances that would apply in order to allow an elected official to be considered an employee.
Do we have any public comment?
Mayor Casey, we don't have any public comment to this item.
Somebody else anything further? Thank you. All right, we can move on to item 4, informational report on fiscal year 2023-24, over to budget monitoring. You have the staff.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. I am Casey Sorga, the city's Admin Services Director. And tonight before you will be a mid-year budget monitoring presentation. And I'll be providing a presentation. We have some members here and they're going to add to it, as well as all members of the departments are here for things. So tonight's staff's recommendation is for the city council to receive the informational budget monitoring update for quarter 2, which is ultimately mid-year for the current fiscal year, which is 23 through 24, and provide feedback or direction to staff. Again, the fiscal year starts on July 1st, 2023, and ends on June 30th, 2024. Our second quarter analysis looks at a 6-month period or the middle of the year. So you see a noted throughout the presentation and the staff report at both mid-year or Q2 for the second quarter. Our city's fiscal and budget policies require staff to provide this quarterly update to the city council, which is part of what we're doing here tonight. And through this analysis, there's an aspect of it being a science, looking at the actual data, and certainly the art side, and understanding what is meant by that data. And that's what we're having conversations with our departments of how actual revenues and expenditures are trending against our adopted budget. You'll see this noted as a year-to-date or YTD data in the reports. However, staff has and always does look at every single line item in our budget. All the time. So this analysis is at the summary level, although we do evaluate it regularly on a daily basis at that detail level. And as we get that information, we want to understand that why. Why do our year-to-date actuals ebb and flow? And is that good news or bad news, cause of concern? Is that totally normal? So we see that in our analysis. So through our meetings, the admin services department, myself and our team here met with every single department in the city and looked at that year-to-date budget activity and asked about their needs for the remainder of the fiscal year. With the adoption of this fiscal year 23-24 budget, just like any budget, it's a policy document that sets up our path and our work plan and our staffing plan for the next 12 months. Here we are at mid-year, and that's often the time where there are requests based on evolving demands. We do have a list of requests from our departments. However, tonight we wanted to get input and feedback from the city council before moving forward with any of those requests. Should we get direction tonight, we can certainly come back in a subsequent meeting, to move forward if there's any action required by the council to consider it then. That final bullet point there is that the city continues to be in what I'm calling a recovering budget phase, where we're moving away from the pandemic. We have a different budgeting philosophy, however, we are quite yet at this recovered budget phase. Part of this is understanding the revenues that come in and our service demands, and that ties into both our local and regional economies. So the next couple slides, we talk about both the California economy and then specifically the Hollister economy. So the California economy, so staff has like a consultant through a few different layers, one of which being Beacon Economics, which is based in Los Angeles, that provides us with statewide information. And through their analysis, they're showing consumer spending did not plunge in 2023. And there was a lot of different economists at different perspectives. Based on our economists, they did not plunge, the data did not show that, and so there were some surprises. Inflation has cooled, however, it's not yet at desired targets. I think we all recognize that. The cost of borrowing money remains above 2022 levels, so still more expensive to borrow money and do any projects that require the use of borrowed money. The cost of borrowed money, however, is expected to become less expensive as those rates presumably will change in the near future. And there's an estimate that at the end of the 2024 calendar year, we might see some activity at the federal level. The final bullet point does showcase that because of these factors, households are prioritizing purchases, but only of essential items. And they are deferring purchases of non-essential items. So it's a little different than the conversation that was happening during the pandemic, where households were choosing not to make any purchases in some respects because they didn't have the disposable income. Now we're seeing that purchases are being made. We're not deferring maintenance on the vehicle, but we're only prioritizing those essential items in the households. The Hollister economy specifically, and this is where I want to talk about both what the macro and micro economies may exist. And one of the examples that I like to touch on is microclimates, because we're all aware of that, especially in our region here. If you drive 10, 15 miles in any direction, it feels different, right? It might be cloudy, might be overcast, might be way too hot. Very different. It's the same thing with our economies. So when we have a conversation about how is Hollister doing, I think it's the same type of perspective to keep in mind that we're on a bit of an island out here. I know it's close, 30 miles and a lot of regional hubs, but we're very different at the same thing, and our data shows that. The sales tax is often a good indicator of how your local economies, those microeconomies are doing. And the city does have a consultant to track and monitor sales tax data on a regular basis throughout the year. Staff does meet with that consultant. They are HDL. We meet quarterly to look at all the activity, every single business here, the clusters or regions throughout the community, and how certain, how's downtown doing, how's Hollister Farm doing, how's these certain regions doing. We gather that information and understand that staff is making recommendations to council to do anything differently. For the most part, the information is we understand how our economy is doing. The final bullet point is something I want to reiterate. We are unlike our neighboring economies, and we'll get a slide that shows this. And that's not a good or bad variable. We're just a little different just based on our geography, our connection to the neighboring regions. That's going to be data point a lot about that. So this is essentially what we're calling the Central Coast. So our consultant HDL provides this to show our sales tax data. And this is showing quarter by quarter regional sales tax data by county. So San Benito County, which Hollister being a lion's share of San Benito County, we kind of whack the dog in that respect. But we are the green column here. The purple column is what we're calling the Central Coast, which includes Monterey, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, and San Benito County. That purple column is a summary level of what we're calling the Central Coast. So this is a good example of Hollister's microeconomy, where we may hear conversations about someone 30 miles or 100 miles down the road is having a good time or a tough time with their economy. I would caution us to look very closely at the Hollister economy, because it might be unlike what's happening in our neighboring jurisdictions. And this is a good example of quarter by quarter regional sales tax. So this is looking at quarter by quarter, because with the spring and summer seasons, we want to track spring and summer versus spring and summer, holiday seasons versus holiday seasons. And we see where our neighboring agencies potentially had tough times, where they were in the negative. Hollister in San Benito County was in the positive in the last 12 months. So that's why I just want to emphasize that Hollister is a microeconomy. Again, not a good variable, not a bad variable, but a variable to consider. There are a handful of factors supporting our existing economy. We've worked to stabilize our existing tax base through programs from the city council, throughout outreach efforts through staff, but also all of our partners in town to really support our existing businesses, their employees, to make sure that they are getting what they need and that they are successful. We've also expanded our tax base in the city. There are new businesses in town. There are new hotels. We now see the data for those new businesses coming into town. What's highlighted here is we now have a full 12 months of sales tax data for the Hollister Farms Shopping Center. We now have roughly a year for the Holiday Inn Express and Suites that opened in December of 2022. And then as we discussed previously, Amazon is a stable and continues to be growing presence in Hollister. Also in support of the Hollister's economy is our demand for development services. So whether or not someone is building something, constructing a project, small or large, and if they're purchasing items here in town, they're getting that over-the-counter sales tax. And if for some reason they're purchasing items out of the area, out of the state, quite frankly, and they're having those products delivered into Hollister for that project, we get the benefit of that use tax that's that transaction. So given that information, we have our mid-year summaries and some projections. With a reminder that our general fund budget through the adoption of the 23-24 budget did rely on the use of fund balance, and some can consider that like savings, but in the use of the fund balance to balance our budget, including the use of federal funds or the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funding as a one-time revenue replacement in support of the general fund. However, the next two bullet points do show that based on our year-to-date activity, we are projecting general fund revenues to come in slightly over budget. I want to emphasize slightly. And similarly, on the general fund expenditures, projected to be slightly under budget. So again, that's where we are a recovering budget. We're not yet where we want to be, but we're working towards stabilization. General fund revenues do include elements like sales tax, property taxes, our share of property taxes, TOT, the transient occupancy tax, also known as the hotel tax, permit and licensing fees, or over-the-counter fees, and charges for service, franchise fees, and a handful of others. Our sales tax consultant looked at the data, looked at the region, and continues to project a flat economy for the duration of this fiscal year for 23-24. Our economy is relatively stable. If you remember the pandemic, and when we hear those jurisdictions that were subject to tourism, that they had a huge hit if it was indoor tourism where they would host conferences in hotels and conference centers. Hollister doesn't have that type of draw, and so we weren't impacted by that. There are also regions that had a huge draw for outdoors recreation. And so they saw potentially a spike during the pandemic in outdoor recreation problem. Hollister also doesn't have that draw yet. I know that's a conversation that we're having right now as a region. Because of that, we have stability. So we have built-in stability, and that's something that our sales tax data is showing. Our general sales tax, kind of the day-to-day over-the-counter sales tax, in addition to the measured W sales tax, are both coming in slightly over budget. Our TOT revenues, again, that hotel tax, are continuing to be stable, including with that addition of that new hotel tax.
Let me see if I can just hop in. One piece that, you know, we're not touching on and highlighting, but I think if you're seeing the news today, just the state budget. You'll hear a lot about the state budget. You have the January budget where the governor will release his budget, and then the legislative office will release with you know their analysis on it. They'll go back and forth. You'll see a May revise, and then they'll work to get their budget through in June. And so originally, you know, the budget in January, the governor Newsom had projected had a $38 million gap, where the LAO had come back with a $58 million gap. They revised it today to a $73 million gap. So you will start to hear probably more and more about that. You have articles coming out. On our state side, that's more of discretionary grants that we receive that have come in. Not a tremendous amount of state grants that have come through. So you may hear that us being a city not running, social programs that may receive those types of funds. It's not as big of an impact to us. However, you do have the effects of the overall economy when the state is, cutting their budget. But as you hear that, if you probably pop on your news tomorrow or even today on your phone, you may see some state articles about that. So
that it would be a point to make in its presentation.
And that's something that we're keeping our ear to the ground on, not only what's happening in other governments, including the state of California, but certainly the regional economy. A lot of the individuals that maybe reside in Hollister actually drive a little bit to work somewhere else. Understanding what that regional economy would need for those that live in Hollister. So we're the same impact. The next slide here shows our general fund expenditures on our year-to-date. So you see Q1 year-to-date spent, which is what we talked about a few months ago. The yellow column, middle of the screen, Q2 year-to-date spent, showing that bottom line total just over $22 million. We reflect that based on the column titled fiscal year 23-24 adopted budget of $49 million. And you'll see year-to-date spent is roughly 46% of what we've been budgeted. You'll notice there's a note at the bottom of the screen that's saying, based on what we know now, and things may change, but based on what we know now, we are projecting a general fund year-end expenditure spend somewhere between 46 million and 47 million. And again, you reference that $49 million budget, which is my earlier point that we're coming in and potentially just a little bit below budget in general fund. So that's the general fund as a whole. The next few slides will talk about our department summaries through the second quarter of that mid-year period. So the department level data talks about all funds, department by department, which is how our budget book was adopted. It's easier to read, easier to understand. We get more technical in nature when you divide all the fund. But at a glance, you can see how the department is doing based on these next slides. And the very different funding sources are called out there. And again, this does cover that 6-month period as well, to emphasize that. And things that could impact the reflection of whether it hits a December 31st timeline or a January 3rd March timeline. It's really subject to our accounts payable process and our contracting process. And so you saw first quarter, relatively lower amount of data. We put 25% through the year. We potentially didn't have 25% of activity. Similarly, so for 6 months of data, it might be a hair lower where we were expecting 50% through the year. We've accounted for that in our year-end projection over time, and we'll learn more and more information as we work through the next steps with the process. So again, this covers a 6-month period. We'll go department by department here. Admin services, which includes finance, risk, and human resources, with a budget of $3.1 million all funds. Year-to-date spent at $1.4 million or 44%. Airport total budget of $2.6 million. Year-to-date spent $2.3 million, which maybe stands out at the 87% year-to-date spent. So that's reflective of some projects that have already done the lion's share of the work. In addition to our new airport director, which is analyzing their budget, juggling some funds in the right areas, some administrative changes, potentially some recommended changes to the budget. Future date, but that's because we've incurred a lot of those costs through that first 6-month period of the year. Again, that's the why part of the art and science. This is the art side. I'm standing the rock. Our city attorney's costs through our contract with Ron Smith. And I do want to highlight, this is a summary of our city attorney's costs. However, every department and division pays for a respective city attorney costs. So if admin services have a need for city attorney, the admin services budget gets charged. If PD has a need for city attorney, the PD budget gets charged. So that's where at the summary level through Q2, where we had $750,000 budgeted across the city, we spent $491,000 year to date. And that does include our agreement with Lozano Smith and a handful of other kind of outside of Lozano Smith, but they're the expert companies. The insurance side, we need to use their services. Also included that total. City clerk, where we have $935,000 budgeted. Our year-to-date expenditures are just under $300,000 for 32%. However, we do expect additional costs to incur as we approach and get into election season. City council budget of $660,000 budgeted, $183,000 spent, roughly 28% budget. City manager, where there was just under $1.2 million budgeted, they've incurred $430,000 of expenditures, roughly 36% of their budget spent. With the note that we do have an assistant city manager that would start in March, so that's going to our salary benefit line, a little lower than 50%, and well by active recruiting for economic development.
If you could go back a slide.
on the service and supply side, you will see that that is over budget. That's due to us having the recruitments for Beckman and McKinney for both the airport manager and assistant city manager, hitting the city manager's budget, as well as a handful of other items. Our grant consultant and those type of costs. So that is where that's at. That's the
The city treasurer, one of the most straightforward budgets that we have, $41,000 budgeted, about 50,000 incurred, 37%. Development services, $4.4 million incurred, $2.9 million year-to-date spent, which is showing a 66% of budget spent. So our increase is showing due to contractual services that are also tied to a general increase in revenue that's brought in how one of our agreements with one of our third-party contractors works. So the more work that they provide, the more revenue that they receive, that our costs go up, but also our revenues do go up at the same time. And also there's kind of what Gabe was mentioning earlier about the administrative changes. So some of our engineering contractual services, which are no longer engineering, is no longer part of development services. When we built the budget, it was included, and so we're looking to make an administrative change to make sure engineering contract services hit the appropriate engineering budget, which is now part of our public works department. So you'll see that same note as we discussed the engineering side here, a $7.3 million budget and year-to-date spent of $1 million. Well, this one is generally underspent at 15%. And we see development services overspent, and so you see some neutralization there, like we do that administrative change. And also note we do have an active recruitment for our city engineer position right now. We'll buck up outside of benefits as that position is filled. Fire department, just under $14 million budgeted, and our year-to-date spent at $6.4 million, which is 40% of the total budget. And I did want to highlight the salary and benefit line item for overtime salaries. We had budgeted that at $1.5 million. Based on our current data, we think we're going to be just a hair over that. I mean, that's given no large emergency that would require their services, which is a lot of times out of our control. But we are seeing that potentially come in up to $1.7 million given the current status. And that second point below showing historical overtime costs. Well, we budgeted 1.5 this year. We're estimating that we may come in at 1.7 for overtime. However, last fiscal year, we were at $2.2 million in overtime costs. The fiscal year before that, in 21-22, we were at $1.4 million in overtime costs. And the year before that, in 2020 through 21, we were at $1.757 million. So as you see, given the nature of any emergency that may pop up, a lot of those are outside of our control. We are certainly looking to stabilize our overtime budget, and having that come in pretty darn close to where we are budgeted is certainly. On the IT side, information systems, they had a $1.9 million budget, and year-to-date spent, they're just under $600,000, which is showing us 30% of the budget spent. There's a lot of savings in the salary and benefits line item. We do a couple of vacancies. We do have active recruitments for our assistant IT director and a IT analyst position. So you see those pop up. Parks and Recreation, $6.7 million budgeted, about $1.3 million year-to-date spent, which is roughly 20% of the budget. Again, this is one of those administrative changes where the Parks Division got juggled between Public Works and over the Parks and Recreation Department. They now reside in Parks and Recreation, so there will be an administrative change to now accommodate that budget in the proper place. We're seeing the actual sit in the proper place, but not the budget in the proper place. We're seeing put those on this side and the next.
And just one thing to add, the budget being very large has to do with the Prop 68 park funds being budgeted into the capital side.
For the police department, just under $15 million budgeted, about 6.7 year-to-date spent, which is roughly 45% spent, generally on target, disregard a little bit. And this is where the public works side, you see the same footnote for the park staff from the public park side. They are at just under 23 million, 22.7 million. In their budget, just under $10 million spent, which is roughly 44%. So you see the change impact that year-to-date spent. So this is all departments, all funds. So generally speaking, everything considered, we have $102 million budget for the city. All departments, all funds. And so you see down below, $48.7 million spent, about halfway through the year, which is generally 48% spent. There was that large item in the non-department, kind of 2/3 of the way down the screen. That was really an administrative, what we call a journal entry to make sure that we accounted for those funds correctly. That showed up in the quarter one monitoring as well, where we moved $13.8 million from Fund 216 and created the dedicated Measure G fund, Fund 286. So that was very much administrative change, but you see the $48.7 million number includes that $13.8 million transaction. So in general, you may consider that significantly lower if you remove that $13.8 million transaction. Part of that because projects are going to happen over the next 4 or 5 months, and some of the workload is beyond staff's capacity. So you'll see it come back as part of the capital improvement plan, capital improvement project plan that will be presented with the 2024-25 budget in terms of making sure something that on the radar is on a schedule so that if it doesn't happen in fiscal year 23-24, that it happens in one of the subsequent years with the capital option. Where do we go from here? So as we discussed earlier, there's going to be a series of administrative changes that do not in any way impact the bottom line. So staff does not have the authority to increase spending in any way. And so these administrative changes will just be between a couple of different accounts with no impact on the bottom line. So where someone maybe is overspending in their office supplies, they may have savings from their professional services, and they'll be able to do an administrative change with no impact to their department's bottom line, and certainly no impact in the general fund or whatever fund they use its bottom line. So if there were a change to the bottom line, that would come back to city council, that recommendation. If there's any direction or input that council wants to provide staff tonight, we'll certainly hear that. And we will use that information to reevaluate our mid-year budget. But also, we're starting to build our 24-25 budget. That'll come in the next few months here. We'll see in March and April, all of our departments will meet again. We have mid-year data for 23-24. We'll use that information based on our priorities from council, from our community, to understand what we need to do in the next fiscal year, the next 12-month cycle. In April and May, the city council will receive a draft budget that will include the city's 5-year capital improvement project plan, you can see CIP plan, and the associated budgets showing where that money will come to fund that plan. In June, our city council will vote no later than June 30th to adopt that budget for fiscal year 24-25, which begins that next 12-month period. And again, I'll just revisit our recommendation today for the city council to receive this informational update and provide any feedback or direction to staff. And with that,
questions.
Yes, thank you. So you made a statement at the beginning, or the city manager, that we used a certain fund to balance the budget. I think it was like a rainy day funds or something.
So I believe it was, we used fund balance to balance our budget. So essentially, the carryover from the prior year becomes our fund balance, because it's like available in that account, and we
How much does that?
I think on the general fund side, we're probably close to $13 million starting fund balance.
Okay, and was the 13.8 from COG? The 13.8 from COG, that wasn't part of that, was it?
Correct.
That's separate.
There's no change in that. That's essentially the Measure G money that we have received from COG,
Uh-huh.
and essentially just putting it in the correct fund.
Okay,
So council member, for the balancing on the general fund side, roughly 8 in the balancing, and then overall all funds, it was roughly 2.
okay. I've got a quick question, so bear with me. So when you're looking at the chart that shows the Central Coast and the trends, number one, why is it only showing the Central Coast? Why are we not looking at Los Banos or the South Bay area? We're considered South Bay area now, aren't we? Like that's our part of our region. We're taking out of Central Coast. So what I'd like to know, why are we not looking at all the other surrounding cities, and if we can?
I think we absolutely can. So HDL, our consultant, provides essentially any data that they have available to them. So that available data, and we can add different regional geographic data points. I think there's historically these were the Central Coast regions that the city had looked at, but if we the direction that add other regions, we would certainly do that.
Yeah, I guess for me in particular, like you guys pointed out, like we're a special unique little island over here. I don't I think that I don't know how much we could rely on this data alone. I'd like to get a better picture and get more data the better of the surrounding communities. And I don't know how much we identify with what they do in those cities. Beautiful to look at though. And if we can compare that to all the other surrounding cities, and we're still looking at those types of trends, yay for us, right? The other thing is, can we look at past trends of that data, of previous years of that data? I'm wondering how much of it is impacted by COVID, let's say, right? Because we are a veteran community, and I'm wondering if that impacted the workforce and the tax revenue that we're going to be making.
Absolutely, and we can piece that together for multi-year, maybe 5 years, so you can get a glimpse at
Yes.
pre-pandemic levels.
Yes.
Where maybe a projection of growth in a normal economy, and where that could be, and that's actually an exercise that the city was required to do in recipient of the ARPA funds. Instead of the useful resource, we can show that data to see how we were pre-pandemic, what the trends have been both locally in Hollister and throughout the region, all our neighbors.
Is that also about, yeah, macro, so to provide our micro, and I thought it was funny how to use that analogy about how the moderated and also, that was cool. Anyway, but I think it'll solidify like the trends that we're seeing here, but I just think that it's important to get more data and bring that back to us. Whenever, it doesn't have to be, it can be sooner, I would think, if it's just that, if it's okay with this council. I am wondering about the airport. It was 206 over on the service and supplies. You said those are all with CIPs. That's usually high.
I'd have to drill down to get that specific detail, and that's definitely off the top of the head. So get you down from putting you on the spot. I can certainly get that answer if we look at the line item detail of the activity in the airport.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, and I hate to put you guys on the spot. I should probably ask you before, but these questions come up every day.
I think we can look for it. If the answer tonight,
Yeah.
we will. If not, we'll certainly do that.
Fire department. So you're gonna have to walk me through this. I've been on the council for a while. And every year, like you guys noted, has been over budget when it comes to overtime. What's different about this year? Why are we not over budget now? And what it's looking like we're projecting we're not gonna be over budget at the end of the year. What happened?
So generally speaking, potentially a budget philosophy, where, well, when we did this number, but I think last year the budget was around $500,000 to $600,000 for overtime. Even though we knew this historically, if you look at 21-22 is 1.5, 2020 and 21 is 1.7. And I believe the budget philosophy at the time was to budget low, and that would cause the actual expenses to be low as well. Our budget philosophy this year looked at historical data, and we tried to budget accordingly to historical data.
So what was our budget for overtime this year? 1.5?
1.5, correct, and we are projected to go just a hair over budget at that 1.7.
So it's still technically over on overtime. And my concern would be like, why? What's the root cause of that issue? Why are we coming in year after year after year over budget on overtime for the fire department? There's something not right about that. And why are we not addressing that? And I hate to put you guys on the spot about that. That's just, this is something I've seen, and looks good on paper that we're saying, well, we're coming in, we're not really over budget, but we have been, and it's not normal in any type of industry, private or public, to be over budget by that much. So that's just a huge concern of mine, and what can we do to address that? What's the root cause of the issue, and how do we resolve that? Because that's been a long-standing issue for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. We can certainly look into that, and if there's.
I hate to put you guys on the spot, but. We're smart.
We'll have an interim chief over.
Yeah, or you can talk to later or whatever.
No, it's fine, I'd like him to address it. One thing I would add is when we did the budget, we looked at historically actuals over the last handful of years.
Yeah.
And so that is where you saw the shift. And in previous years, it was, I believe almost at all of those years that Casey has up there, it was budgeted at 600,000. And so if you're budgeted at 600,000 and come in at 1.7 and then 600,000.
We're over time. They're not talking everyday salary, you're talking overtime. So that's when you stand out. A bit of a top up,
Understood. But from a pulling the number 600,000 and budgeting that, we had to look at what we get it a little closer to the historic actual. So as for how the overtime works, I'll pass it over to.
Of course, on the fire side of it, it's not like your standard corporation where If someone calls in sick, that work for that day just doesn't get done until the next day. We have contractual obligations to maintain certain staffing. And we try to prioritize, meeting that minimum staffing every day. If a firefighter were called sick and us not fill it, then we start sending our fire apparatus out understaffed. It puts us in in a situation where it's difficult for us to meet the needs, especially if we get a major incident, or to be able to respond to incidents and try to meet our NFPA and all of our requirements for fire service. Like I said, in the past, everything was done, the number that was projected wasn't really indicative of the operational needs of the department. And one way to combat the overtime number is to hire enough staff to backfill if firefighters call sick. Now, we're working on doing that this year. We've added some more personnel, but they're not past the training yet. So they're technically not filling those holes just yet. Once they get past the QABs and they're available to start working in all the different classifications, you should see a little bit better control on the overtime. Another thing we faced this year is we had some unexpected guys go on workman's comp. So we're constantly having to fill those positions every day for the month on call. And we had one on the administrative.
Okay, and then I'm just wondering, if this is the common practice here, is this the common practice within the other cities, that you're a million plus over on the overtime for the fire?
It is. If you dig in deep, which I did just a few years ago, I noticed a lot of the surrounding communities would, Monterey, for example, would put down their overtime this year. I'm kind of throwing a high number, it's going to be 12 minutes. When it came down to the end of the year, it was 15 or 17. I think Joy had an overtime budget of 700,000. When we came into the year, it was 2.4 million. So this is very consistent across the communities. I think, like I said, the overtime that's projected is just not representative of what the operational needs of the department are. They try to set a number and make you hear something that's just impossible.
So then my other idea would be that we hire a consultant to really dig in, to look at the challenges that the chief is mentioning, and to see if we might need to change our operations or restructure things here, what's going to better benefit us. So is that something we can do to address that issue?
Bring a consultant on to study that, or would just take a vote of the council to develop the contract? You go out, something like that, you would go out for RFP, that would be something that we bring to you first. So we would need to get direction, get consensus. We got that, we would bring the RFP back. That would be something that would get voted on. We'd go after the procurement process, ultimately select someone to got that consideration.
Okay. Thank you so much for letting me know. You answered the call, you answered. Yeah, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Questions. So, Casey, well, first, I just want to say great job. It is really challenging to kind of go over the budget and summarize it and articulate it in a way that's simple. It's very complicated, but you made it seem really simple and easy to understand. So I want to say kudos and unless I might want to say thank you. Thank you for that. I guess to my colleagues, I would ask, if we're asking for more information, my question and what I'm asking my fellow council members is, what is the research question you're trying to answer? If you do get those data points, what are you trying to answer? What are you trying to obtain? Sometimes we ask for information, and I think for our city, in terms of looking at priorities and looking at resource allocation, what is that going to get you? Is that nice to know, or is that a need to know? Do we absolutely need that? I'd rather have our staff, implementing, kind of looking at 403, looking at strategies, planning, and investing time in, there's a lot of things that we need to do, and I would prioritize the things that we need to do versus the nice to know. And for the record, so I do know that within the budgets, you can move money around. That's really easy to do, and it's actually very common. Every organization, corporate, private, government moves money around because nothing is an exact thing. You will never get to that penny. It's always going to be off. You're always going to be moving money around. And it's at the end of the year, if you meet your financial goals, great, but also in government, there's a lot of unpredictability. because we serve the public and things happen. And so we also need to be able to look at what's happening within our community to prioritize those things and making sure our community is safe and has what we do. So with that, thank you all for doing a wonderful job with all of your departments and your budgets. It is very clear that you're all working really hard and and that's what leadership does is leaders look at investing, planning, strategizing, motivating staff and working with them. And I know that the city of Hollister, all of our employees really are just extraordinary at looking at the resources and just maximizing that to where I haven't seen it in other jurisdictions. I just want to say thank you so much for working. We are extremely lucky to have not only the department head that we have, but also every single employee that just loves to be here and is working really hard to serve our community. So thank you.
I'm not sure if I have a question at this point. I mean, we probably asked already. I do want to say thank you as well, because it is a very complex topic. It really easy to understand. So thank you for that. And thank you everyone who's working so hard to keep the budgets in line. And Chief Dillon, thank you for explaining that this is an industry-wide issue. It's not a Hollister issue. So I have no interest in doing a study to find out that this is something that's happening. It's very hard to keep staff and then you don't know what you're going to need, when there's emergencies. So I get it. I think at this point, we have any public comment on this.
Mayor Casey, there's no public comments for this thing.
Okay. So do we have any other discussion or on the? Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. Well, 8:15. Not any other information. This is good. So, that's going to send us to you.
Thank you, thank you. So again, I think that we need to know why one of our departments comes over budget by $500,000 or more every single year since I've been here on the city council. It's pretty important. And if that is an issue, then I think we should find out why and how can we address that. So I'm gonna ask the council to consider getting consultants in here to help us figure that out so we can start to address that problem. So that's on the table. Also, a young lady, a Hollister Baylor by the name of Elisa Hernandez, played out of the country in El Salvador with a soccer team, and I'm hoping that we can recognize her and recognize her for her efforts in representing our city and on international level. Those are my two things. Thank you.
I don't know. Okay. So as far as committee, last week we had the animal control ad hoc committee, and we discussed, and I was asked to bring back, and I fully support the idea of amending the SNP bus contract to add vaccination to feral cats. One of the things that was brought up and discussed, particularly the Deanne Buck, who does a lot of wildlife work here, is that if we have feral cats that are sick with rabies or parvo, they can infect wildlife. They can also infect our domestic pets. So it's pretty important. And also, SNP has indicated that they are willing to provide the vaccinations at cost, which is pretty significant because they buy in very large bulk, so they can get it at a very reduced rate. The estimated cost for this would be $300 or less per clinic. So I'd like to get some consensus of the council to do this. And then I have one question about it that for the city manager, that if we do get consensus, this is a fairly small amount, less than $5,000. Do we need to come back as an agenda item, or is it something that you have authority to just do if we get consensus on?
So we require a contract amendment at 300 a clinic. I believe we would still be within my purchasing authority to amend.
Consensus. Okay, and then had a meeting the LAFCO with Mayor Friel, so San Juan Bautista, in order to do city selection for the alternate person that sits on LAFCO for the city. We alternate, some years it's Hollister, some years it's San Juan Bautista, council member that serves as the alternate. It's a little nebulous as to how long the term is supposed to be, so there's a very clear I know that Hollister had, the city alternate position for a number of years. Last year, we had someone, Councilmember EJ Sabatia appointed, so what we opted is to just renew and have EJ Sabatia sit this year as the alternate, and then we're gonna follow up with that for attorney to get their direction. If we should be doing this every year or, have a term, so. There's that, intergovernmental committee, we had a discussion around Pinnacles National Park and naming it the home of Pinnacles National Park. And so they want to, work on promoting tourism, and they want to invite folks from various agencies and groups to come in and have some further discussion on that. So that'll be happening after 2 meetings. Fall, we had a special meeting to approve the contract for our new legal counsel, Sloan and Sakai. And that's pretty exciting because these are attorneys that specialize in transportation, and they're going to be pretty invaluable at helping us to negotiate on contracts, especially like with Caltrans. So, also attended a leadership forum for economic development. This was a pretty big deal. The president of Cal ED was there, as well as the program director, and they kind of gave us the nuts and bolts around economic development, what it is, and also discussing the priorities that were outlined in the EDC's SEDS report. So we had some really valuable discussion and Q&A on how to overcome some of the obstacles that San Diego County faces. So that's the community assignments as far as just report out. I would like to see us, we talked about it before, but last year we didn't manage to have an actual workshop on goal setting and priorities. And I'd really like to see that happen this year before we get to the meat of the budget. And I'd like to have it facilitated by an expert, so I'm looking for council consensus on this. Because it will allow us to work together and develop our goals and priorities, and that's going to drive everything we do, including helping with the budget. And last year we didn't actually have a workshop. We ended up with a 1-hour session where we all just kind of talked about things that are important, but we didn't really come up with a good goal setting. So I'm hoping we can get consensus on that. Also, one of my big priorities is for revitalization downtown. So I'm asking if we can look at the that agenda item, the discussion on creating like a parking and green spaces program for downtown. Part of what makes the downtown vibrant is how easy it is to park and get into the downtown area. With our parklets, we lost a lot of parking space. So I'd like to look at how we can improve that, and also green spaces been shown to be a really add vibrancy downtown. So I know we're also doing visual improvements at Dunn Park that maybe we can even look at a master plan to really update and revitalize it. It was once this jewel of the downtown, and it's a place where everybody gathered. So it'd be nice to bring that, bring that back. So yeah, I mean, just looking for consensus to bring it back as a discussion item, and perhaps city manager could share with us if there's any specific funds that are out there available that might fall into those categories that want to help us if we want to do some work in that area. And then the last thing is, I wanted to see if we could bring back the inclusionary housing ordinance. We didn't have full attendance when it was at last addressed, and so the item did not move forward. But I'd really like to see us adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance as soon as possible. So I'm requesting consensus to bring it back, and I know we can't bring back the exact same ordinance, so I'm asking you to bring it back with a change in breakdown of the 15% affordable from the proposed 7-5-3 split to a 6-5-4 split. So that will change it so that we can actually address it again. And Councilmember Burns, at the time we did review it, was talking about learning from planning department had talked about some creative ways to do alternative compliance. So perhaps they could bring back a little list for us to discuss as a part of that. And that's all I got. Did you have any items that you wanted to?
No, I just want to allow us that time to go through the items that we had identified as priorities.
So I'll do consensus on this and then we'll go in for report. So Councilmember Resendez had asked for a consultant to take a look at the OT issue with the fire department. One, two, no consensus on it. The recognition of Elisa Hernandez, for soccer. Looking at, amending the SNP bus contract to include vaccines at $300 a foot.
Is that through the districtual funds? No, we just, I would say no, we do, contract compliance, and we don't contract compliance, so I would say no.
I think we got consensus, and my suggestion would be just to take up one of our discretionary funds. I think I offered that to the community, but I forgot what you had said about that. Was this coming back already? I don't remember our conversation, but that was my original idea, just take one of our discretionary funds. I'm happy to do it.
I'm concerned about starting to pull from discretionary funds. I feel like this should be part of. It should be part of going forward with my year. It just should be part of the process. So I'd rather not do discretionary laws if that's the only way to do it. Then fine, but.
Well, what I'm hearing is, make sure I hear it correctly. One yes with discretion, one yes without discretion, one no. I don't think I'm hearing consensus. Yes, I'm misconstruing that.
I mean, I think Councilmember Resendez started with yes. And then,
Yes, and just take it from my discretionary funds.
so then I would agree with you.
Then I'm willing to, if he wants to take it from discretionary funds, it's fine. I want to see it down. I want to say, oh, yeah, some technicality and then we don't get it. So.
Okay. Bringing in a consultant to conduct a goal setting and council priorities workshop in coordination with the budgeting process. One. A parking and green space program, I'll probably agendize. I will probably need a little bit more information before I could bring forward a meaningful.
Don't you consensus with agendize it now?
Yeah, so maybe.
I'm not really clear on what that is.
Yeah, I mean, we would bring a,
Just to look at, there are just ways to revitalize the downtown and one of the big issues is parking. And then we have no green space downtown, so it would just allow us to look at if we have funding that's sitting there that we could do something with, perhaps work on getting more parking downtown. There's vacant lots that are sitting there that we might be able to do something with to create more parking downtown or to create green space downtown. Just to
okay, so a discussion on looking at perhaps some of the vacant lots in town, we either do to provide increased parking for the community or green space through.
yeah, just look at it and see. I know there's a lot of different funds, and then we talked about health funds, and I just don't know what we have, you know, funding wise that might be able to cover some of that. So I'm hoping we can get some information about that as well. Okay.
You can take this in. Looking at funding options for a Dunn Park master plan. Like, you know, we could bring something forward. Conducting a master plan is a pricey endeavor. So what we could do is look at gathering quotes and.
Yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't clear on that. I was thinking that as part of that overall, bringing back and discussing green spaces. Is that something that might be, you know, talked about? And I wasn't trying to do this a second.
She wants them lumped together, the downtown parking.
Yeah, we can bring both.
We just bring it back and talk about it.
Okay.
But we want to see them, deal with it right now.
And then bringing inclusionary housing back with that 15% with a 6-5-4 split. And a listing of alternative compliance options as requested by Councilmember Burns last week.
I do have a question for the city attorney on that. The mayor stated that this is significant and not going to change to bring it back. Is that true?
I would say yes, just based on hearing the conversation that it was first or last considered. Those were some of the kind of sticking points. So if those are changed, it would be something new.
Okay. More for it.
And that was the end of the items that impact sequence as well.
So that's it for you, or did you kind of report out?
Sure, I can give you a photo. I had the good fortune of attending the League of California City Managers Conference the week of February, it was actually February 6th through 8th. And so that's a conference designed, it's more of a staff level conference. Typically what you see is city managers and assistant city managers. It's great because it's a smaller conference with smaller workshops. I was able to attend workshops around economic development, ballot measures that are coming forward similar to Mr. Lameli's presentation, as well as resident engagement strategies, as well as organizational culture and ethics courses. So I appreciate the opportunity to attend. And then I do know that our airport director recently attended a conference for airport operators, as well as Mr. Astorga attending a risk-based conference at the same time I was at. So the staff is out at very valuable trainings, and I appreciate that. Not at this time.
So. Unless there's anything further, we have a motion to adjourn. So, second,
Second.
all those in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Please, adjourn.